In the African savanna, a mother cheetah and her cubs enjoy a peaceful morning until, suddenly, they hear noises signaling the arrival of danger. Moments later, a lion appears, quickly closing in on the cheetah. To protect her young, the mother flees, but despite her speed, she is surrounded by a pride of lionesses who attack her. The cheetah doesn't stand a chance, and after the assault, the lionesses walk away, unaware that the cubs are still there. Separated by the dense jungle, one of the little ones walks through the night until he reaches a road, where he is nearly run over by a car. Luckily, Peter, the driver, swerves just in time. Seeing the cub alone and vulnerable, he and his son, Zan, decide to rescue him. They quickly realize it's a cheetah cub, and although Peter explains to Zan that one day they'll have to return it to the wild, the boy can't help but grow attached to the animal and decides to care for it until it's ready to go back to the wilderness. The next day, Peter and Zan take the cub to their farm, where they already care for other abandoned animals. There, Zan introduces the little cheetah to his mother, who names him Duma. In no time, Duma becomes part of the family. Meanwhile, Peter teaches Zan to be independent, preparing him for adult life by showing him how to drive and fix things. One day, however, while working on the farm, Peter suddenly feels ill and collapses on the tractor. He is rushed to the hospital and, though he recovers, his health remains fragile. Some time later he returns home, and the family is reunited, though his sickness continues to weigh on them. One morning, Peter challenges Zan to a race with Duma to see just how fast the cheetah can go. Zan films everything with his camera as, in just seconds, Duma outruns them both, reaching speeds of over 80 kilometers per hour. Back at home, Kristen, Zan's mother, helps him with his studies, but suddenly bursts into tears. Concerned, Zan asks her what's wrong, but she tells him to keep reading, hiding her sorrow. The following day, while Zan plays with Duma in the treehouse, Peter calls them inside. It's time for the boy to say goodbye to his friend. Duma is growing, and Peter knows it's time to return him to his true home in the wild. Though Zan refuses to let go, his father shows him a map and points to a valley beyond the mountains where the cheetah will be able to live free and in peace. Peter promises that the next week they'll have a picnic in that valley and spend their last day together with Duma. But that night, Zan and Duma are awakened by the sound of an ambulance outside. The boy runs toward the noise and finds Kristen, who embraces him in tears and tells him that his father's health has worsened. Tragically, Peter does not survive the illness, and the next day, during the funeral, Zan says goodbye to his beloved father for the last time. The family now faces their hardest days, trying to adapt to life without Peter. Things worsen when Kristen tells Zan they'll have to rent out the farm and move to Johannesburg, as the bills are piling up and they'll need to live with her sister, Gwen, for a while. Yet Zan refuses to abandon Duma. Despite the risks, Kristen agrees to bring the cheetah with them until a wildlife reserve can take him. On moving day, the family arrives at Aunt Gwen's house, but she is far from happy about having a cheetah under her roof. Kristen assures her that Duma will behave, and the next day she takes Zan to his new school while she searches for work. Meanwhile, Duma, bored of sitting on the couch, begins to explore the house. Suddenly, he leaps onto the dining table, scaring Gwen so much that she runs out of the house, leaving the door wide open. Taking advantage of the chance, the cheetah bolts into the city, chasing after Zan, trying to follow his scent. From the classroom window, Zan is distracted, staring outside, when suddenly he spots Duma running past. The cheetah doesn't take long to slip into the building, and within seconds, everything descends into chaos. Screams of panic echo throughout the school as Duma dashes aimlessly through the halls. In the midst of the uproar, 2 armed police officers storm the school, and Zan knows he has to find Duma before they do. He begins searching everywhere, but when he reaches the bathroom, he sees a group of rowdy students surrounding his friend. Without thinking, Zan rushes over and tells them to back off, but the boys ignore him and shove him to the floor. At that moment, Duma bursts into the bathroom and, with a fierce growl, scares them away from his friend. Zan seizes the chance to get Duma out of there, but the police spot them and give chase. The escape isn't easy, but together they manage to lose the officers and hide in a nearby park. Once they're safe, Zan realizes the city is no place for Duma. Right then, he remembers his father's plan, to take the cheetah to the valley, his true home. Without a second thought, Zan decides to help his friend get there. He returns to the farm, grabs Peter's motorcycle and the old map, and with Duma at his side, sets off on the journey. After a few hours, the bike runs out of gas in the middle of the desert. With only a single bottle of water, Zan pushes the motorcycle along with Duma. On their way, they come across a crashed airplane. Zan decides it will be their shelter for the night, curling up inside the wreckage while Duma keeps watch. Just as night begins to fall, Duma alerts him that someone is approaching. Zan wakes up to see a man trying to steal the motorcycle. Startled by the noise, the boy demands to know who he is. Caught off guard, the drifter pulls out a knife, but Zan calmly tells him that Duma is with him and has no intention of attacking unless provoked. The man relaxes slightly and introduces himself as Rip, a wanderer traveling south. Zan explains that he's heading west and makes him an offer. If Rip gives him a ride on the bike, he'll share some water. Rip agrees and introduces his traveling companion, a small bush baby named Machaka, whom he picked up along the way. The next day, Zan comes up with an idea to make the bike move faster. He finds a parachute inside the plane and attaches it to a piece of wood, rigging it up as an improvised sail. The wind pushes the bike forward at high speed, allowing them to cover ground quickly. While Rip goes in search of more water, he finds a dry well where he suspects there might be an underground river. After some digging, he finally uncovers enough water to keep them going. Food, however, remains a problem. While searching for something to eat, Zan spots an ostrich and decides to test Duma's hunting skills, sending him after the bird. The cheetah sprints after the prey, and minutes later, Zan goes to see what happened. Instead of finding the ostrich, he only discovers its eggs. Though edible, Rip can't help but laugh. He tells Zan that Duma won't survive in the wild if he doesn't learn to hunt like a true predator. But Zan refuses to be discouraged. He pulls out the map his father had given him and shows Rip the valley where Duma could live peacefully, far from other predators. Seeing the place marked, Rip grows serious and warns him that to get there, they'll have to cross the Okavango, a treacherous region from which almost no one returns alive. Rip suggests that Zan should turn back to the city and sell Duma for a hefty sum, but Zan flatly refuses. He will not abandon his friend. Seeing the boy's determination, Rip agrees to accompany him a little further, and together they prepare for the adventure ahead. Along the way, Zan looks at his father's old compass, which keeps pointing west, while Rip heads down a different path. Though the boy finds it strange, he decides to follow him. After a while, they arrive at a deserted village. The place is deserted and littered with human bones, leading Rip to believe that the former inhabitants were victims of some mysterious attack. As they explore, Rip finds a sharp piece of metal and fashions it into a spear in case they need to face a predator. While they continue searching, a helicopter appears, hovering over the village. Looking up, Rip whispers to Zan and Duma to hide quickly inside one of the houses, warning them that bad people are on board. But inside the helicopter is his mother, Kristen. She had asked the authorities for help in finding her missing son. Zan, however, doesn't realize she is there, and when the helicopter flies away, he remains unaware of his mother's presence. This only deepens his suspicions about Rip. When night falls, Rip lights a fire to keep the lions away and asks Zan if he knows the legend of the cheetah's tear marks. Zan answers that, according to his father, the marks help prevent the sun's glare from reflecting into their eyes while hunting. But Rip tells him a different version. Long ago, a cheetah cub was lost from his mother, and she searched the entire world but never found him. The mother suffered so much from the loss that she wept for days, and her tears left the black streaks on her face. Those lines were passed down to all cheetahs born afterward. They are the marks of her sorrow. After this story, the group rests by the fire. The next day, Rip ventures deeper into the desert in search of something more. Before long, he discovers an abandoned diamond mine. Hoping to find a few remaining gems, he decides to enter. Zan, however, begins to grow suspicious of his intentions. Distrusting Rip, he decides to leave him behind and prepares to escape with Duma. But just as he is about to go, he hears Rip's screams from inside the cave, followed by a loud rumble as if something had collapsed. Zan rushes inside and finds Rip trapped under a landslide. Without hesitation, the boy digs enough dirt away to let him breathe. Rip thanks him but begs him to keep clearing the debris. Instead, Zan demands answers. "Where are you really taking me?" he asks, convinced that Rip had been planning to lead them south, not west as he had claimed. Zan also accuses him of wanting to sell Duma and profit from the reward. Rip, confused, tries to defend himself and promises to guide the boy through a safer route across the mountains, but Zan doesn't believe him. Finally, he decides to leave Rip trapped in the cave and continues on his way. Before leaving, he takes Rip's backpack and Machaka, the little bush baby, and sets out with Duma. Hours later, Zan and Duma come across a wide river that, according to the map, must be crossed. Using the skills his father taught him, Zan builds an improvised raft. At first, everything seems calm as they drift along the river. But soon, Duma begins to act strangely, and Zan, looking ahead, sees the water turning rough with rocks in the way. He tries to steer the raft, but it's too late. The current is stronger than he expected, and the raft overturns, throwing them into the water. They struggle to stay afloat, and the danger intensifies when a group of crocodiles emerges, attacking them. With the spear Rip had left behind, Zan tries to fight them off, but fortunately, the current sweeps them toward the shore, and they narrowly escape. After their ordeal on the river, the journey continues. Zan and Duma cross through a vast cornfield, and just as they reach the other side, the boy comes face to face with a herd of African buffalo. The thunderous stampede startles them. Machaka, the little bush baby, panics and bolts, while Duma instinctively charges after one of the buffalo. Zan tries to follow, but soon loses sight of the cheetah. Hours pass, and Duma does not return. To make matters worse, night begins to fall, and Zan, alone in the middle of the savannah, becomes an easy target for predators. Still, he doesn't give up. He keeps searching until he reaches a dense forest, where he comes across a wild boar. Zan quickly climbs a tree to get to safety, but just as he thinks he's safe, a venomous spider crawls across his face. The boy remains perfectly still, holding his breath, until the boar finally wanders away. With the path clear, Zan climbs down and continues his search, unaware that Duma has also entered the forest, only to end up trapped in a hidden cage set by poachers who traffic in wild animals. Duma struggles to break free, but the trap holds him tight. Meanwhile, Zan keeps searching when, out of nowhere, Machaka jumps onto his face, startling him. The boy is relieved to see the little bush baby again, but his relief doesn't last long. The boar returns, this time more aggressive. Zan tries to run, but he stumbles, falls hard, and everything goes black. When he comes to, he's lying beside a campfire. Next to him is Duma, free, and Rip, gently stroking the cheetah. Rip explains that he found Duma trapped and rescued him, and that he also saved Zan just before the boar could attack. Still dazed, Zan apologizes for having left him behind. Rip then opens up. He admits that his original plan was to take Zan back to the city and collect the reward, so he could return to his family. Years ago, he left his home, abandoning his wife and children in search of fortune in the big city, but everything went wrong. He ended up in prison and, ever since, has been wandering alone, surviving however he can and searching for gemstones to gather enough money to go back home. Hearing all this, Zan starts to trust Rip again, who promises to help him finish the journey and take Duma to his new home. But first, they need food. They come across a couple of deer, and Zan urges Duma to try hunting one. Yet the cheetah still doesn't have the skill to hunt on his own and lets them escape. The group remains hungry, but that night, they spot lights in the distance, a group of tourists camping nearby. Rip and Zan come up with a plan. The boy approaches the group, pretending to have been bitten by a venomous snake. Alarmed, the tourists panic, and at that moment, Zan releases a black snake from under his shirt. Terrified, the tourists flee, leaving everything behind. Rip and Zan seize the chance to take enough food to keep going. Later, they continue downriver on a boat. During the journey, Zan hands Rip all of his savings as a token of gratitude for his help. Touched by the gesture, Rip gives him a small diamond he had found in the cave, as a symbol of their friendship. After crossing the river, they follow the path into the mountains. Along the way, Duma runs ahead and finds the carcass of a deer. Rip warns them to be careful, since it could mean lions are nearby. But Duma, following his instincts, begins devouring the prey. Zan tries to get him to share, but Duma growls fiercely at him. Zan freezes, stunned by the reaction, but Rip tells him to let the cheetah be. Duma is beginning to turn into a true wild animal. With their stomachs full, the group takes shelter in a cave. There, they find ancient rock paintings on the walls. Rip observes quietly and mentions that his old village is nearby. He recalls how he and his father used to camp in that very cave when he was a boy. But now, everything has changed, and that place, like so many others, will end up forgotten. Moved by his words, Zan confesses that he doesn't like how things have changed since his father died. He feels that everything has gotten worse, and he fears his life will change again when the time comes to let go of Duma. Rip listens calmly and tells him that change is inevitable, but not always bad. Thanks to change, Zan has become stronger and braver. And the same is true for Duma, who little by little is rediscovering his place in the wild. He understands, but knowing it doesn't make it any easier to face the idea of saying goodbye to his best friend, something that now feels closer than ever. The next morning, Zan, Rip, and Duma leave the cave behind and keep walking across a vast open field. In the distance, Rip spots the remnants of his old village and starts toward it, with Zan close behind. Suddenly, a dense cloud of flies swarms them. Rip reacts instantly. He takes off his coat and wraps it completely around Zan to shield him, leaving himself exposed to the attack. The flies bite him mercilessly. Soon, Rip begins to feel sick. The venom causes his body to swell, his limbs to go numb. He can barely move his fingers, and his eyes start to close from exhaustion. As if that weren't enough, rain begins to pour, and the sounds of predators approaching make everything even more dangerous. Struggling to stay conscious, Rip gathers some dry grass and asks Zan to use the lighter to build a fire. Miraculously, they manage to spark a flame, and that small fire becomes their only refuge against the rain and wild animals. When the storm eases a little, Zan realizes he has to find help. He asks Duma to watch over Rip and heads into the darkness. But he hasn't gone far when a pride of lions detects him and gives chase. At that moment, Duma senses his friend is in danger and runs after him without hesitation. The cheetah manages to draw the lion's attention and lead them toward a cave. Using his agility, Duma escapes through the other side, unharmed. Meanwhile, Zan finally reaches a village and encounters an elder. Though they don't speak the same language, Zan manages to explain the situation. The elder understands and gathers several villagers, who follow him back to where Rip lies unconscious. They carry him to the village and give him the care he needs. Zan, still worried, stays by his side the whole way. Once there, he calls out for Duma, but the cheetah stops. He has heard another sound in the distance. Another cheetah. Curious, Duma goes off to investigate. The next morning, Zan waits outside the hut while the elders tend to Rip. Thanks to their treatment, the venom slowly fades. When Rip finally wakes, he finds himself face to face with his wife, his 2 children, and his mother, all gathered there to see him. Overcome with emotion, Rip begs for forgiveness for all the years he lost. Then he calls Zan in and introduces him to his family, thanking him for giving him a second chance. Zan smiles, but his joy isn't complete. Duma still hasn't returned. Restless, the boy leaves the village to look for him. He ventures into the savannah until, in the distance, he spots 2 cheetahs running side by side, chasing a herd of antelope. He watches as they bring one down, and then he recognizes him. It's Duma. He has finally found his place in the wild. Zan recalls his father's words, who always said that one day he would have to set Duma free. Though it hurts, he knows that moment has come. With a heavy heart, he turns away and begins to walk. But then, Duma runs after him and, just as he had so many times before, nuzzles him with his head. Zan strokes him one last time and tells him to be happy, not to forget him. Duma looks at him for one more moment, then returns to his new companion. From a distance, Rip quietly watches the scene, then welcomes Zan with an embrace. Days pass. Back at the farm, Kristen continues tending the place, still holding on to the hope that her son will return. And one day, she sees him. Zan rides up on Peter's old motorcycle, dressed in village clothes, with Machaca in his arms. Kristen runs to him, relieved, and hugs him tightly. Zan, through laughter and tears, promises her he will never leave her alone again.